got the cornfield calm, Midwest tone, but he's spitting facts like a dog with a bone. Lanky frame, fire-haired, eyes on the case, breaking down the game in the darkest place. Sports scores to murder boards, Hoosier logic cuts like swords. From Friday lights to chalked out lines, this redhead's brain rewrites the lines inside the Hoosier mind, where the stories twist and stats unwind. He's a legend in flannel, mic in hand, digging deep where few can stand. From touchdowns to crime scenes raw, he's got the truth in every draw. Yeah, step in if you dare to find what's brewing inside the Hoosier mind. He'll talk Pacers, Colts, or Colts on trial. Hoosier humor with a devilish smile. He's that redhead sleuth with a box of clues. Takes your headline, breaks the news. With every stat and every scream, he's painting portraits in your stream. Don't blink, he'll tie it tight. From game night wins to murder plight. Inside the Hoosier mind, where the facts hit hard and the lines are blind. He's a ginger ninja, smooth and slick, cracking cases play by play quick. From courtrooms to the hardwood floor, he digs for more than just the score. Tune in and don't rewind, you're deep now inside the Hoosier mind.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you in part by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice, helping teach them how to podcast, and most importantly, letting veterans' voices be heard. I have a very special guest with me today, a gentleman by the name of Porter Hayes, who is a co-host on the Hawg Talk, because he is everything and all things that is Arkansas, especially the Razorbacks and whatnot. I know you cover football, basketball, baseball, anything else that you guys talk about?
Everything, man. Anything softball, anything that's going on Razorbacks, we try to cover it.
Awesome. So I think this is the first time we've ever done a show, or if it isn't, it's been a long time since you and I have done a show together.
We've known each other for a long time, and this is the first time we've really linked up and done a show together. So I appreciate you having me on.
No, I appreciate you coming on. I'm super excited for this because for anybody who doesn't know Porter, he's great show host and whatnot. He and I both love college sports, especially college football and whatnot. And this topic actually came up a little bit before Memorial Day. And then I kind of got excited a little bit, but then I was like, we're kind of deep into the off season so far for college football. We still got about 2 more months left before we get the first kickoff. And we kind of have some big news as far as changing and developments in the world of college football. The House versus the NCAA settlement comes about, and it's kind of crazy as to, with everything that came about with that, all the repercussions that have come out. It ended up being a almost $2.8 billion settlement between the defendant conferences. So the Power 5 conferences and student athletes are going to be paying them for the last, I believe it's 2016 is the year that they start for former collegiate athletes all the way up into current. That's going to be for about the next 10 years, as well as we officially have a new governing body for college football, at least. I'm assuming it's going to rope in a lot of the other college sports, but I know one of the biggest that was really pushing for this as far as independence from the NCAA was the college football side. And I wanted to get Porter's thoughts on the whole entire thing. So at least initially with this NIL deal, with all the changes that have come about that the last couple of years with athletes getting paid, there's a lot of worries that it's going to ruin college football as a whole. And one of the big things that I remember hearing out of both the SEC meeting and the Big Ten meeting even the week before was that they think this is going to potentially help that. And do you think that's necessarily true? Because there's some that are really worried about, some schools might even go broke almost with not being able to really compete and be competitive with, if Texas is, spending $100 million on, 5 or 6 athletes, Texas State isn't going to be able to put that type of money up. So what's what's your thoughts? Do you think it really saves college sports as a whole?
I think it does in a sense because, I mean, you look at, let's back up and you look at college basketball this year, and we had Arkansas's in the College World Series, and they were talking about what is the most exciting part of the year, like especially SEC and stuff like that. SEC, is it College World Series or is it March Madness? And I said at first, now if I say it now, it's College World Series because you're getting. You look game one now, Arkansas is playing LSU, and then you see on the other side of the bracket from start to finish, you're getting good quality, and then you have a championship series.
Yep.
March Madness, it's like that first weekend, then you might get some upsets, and then it filters out, and then the fans. So I think with the college football is, outside the blue bloods, and then you have SEC. I think you're making where this is eventually going to break away from the NCAA. You're going to have a college football, which they need. You got to get a handle on this. Players deserve to get paid. I preached this for years. When the NCAA started making this a business, the players should be getting paid. It's not used to what it is anymore. Now, the back pay players, whatever y'all want to figure out that. I'm in a weird situation because Arkansas, it's like they're one of those programs that they're really hoping on this revenue sharing. They're really jumping on board with this, but in the same sense, they're not the biggest components for NIL. Hunter Yurchek, the AD, has been very public about just not being as big on the NIL as other ones. And I think that worries me of sense of you got to be bought in. You don't have to like it, but you have to be bought in on this new one. You see what Ohio State did with their roster. But you also see Clemson, one of those schools that you give them a little bit of money. What can they do? But you always have the haves and have nots. It's been that way from the years of the Notre Dame, Newt Rockne, let's see, UCLA's. Then you have the Michigans, Ohio State. You're always going to have those schools.
Yeah.
A lot of people now are like, well, they're getting paid, and it's going to turn into a minor league football is what it's going to turn into. You need commissioners. You're seeing college teams get GMs. And so, yes, I think you need to have salary caps. You need to have, because they have it in the pros.
Yeah.
If you're going to model this of where it's going to work and stay consistent, yes, you need all the help you can get. And you need to be able to let the programs run their schools and then know you have all this, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on, tampering and, guys saying they're getting 2 million, 3 million, when in reality, what are they really getting? There's no transparency. Yeah. So now that they have to, anything over $600 go through a clearinghouse, you're having to really do stuff to get your NIL money. It's almost like it was more fun when they were doing the McDonald's bags at Tennessee.
Right.
So, I think it needs to be, because you can have a really good product. We already seen that with March Madness. It was chalk, but it was fun. You had Arkansas, Kansas. You had all these things going on round one all the way through. And I think once people get over that initial shock of they're just throwing money, they're getting paid, you're still going to have those fans.
Yeah. And I will say, not to deviate too far down a rabbit hole real quick. I know a lot of fans are kind of mad about like what you're bringing up of the money has kind of ruined college football, because they were talking about the conference moves and whatnot. And when you kind of look back on it, at least within the last 20 years, this really started when you had the Big East really fall as far as football goes. They lost four of their major programs with Miami. I had it up here and I can't remember all the teams off the top of my head. So you had US, Miami, and Virginia to the ACC. UConn, ends up joining the Big East. But then shortly after that, they lose Boston College. They lose
I believe Syracuse was one of those too. That
Syracuse,
was in the Big East.
Yeah, ended up jumping ship. And that was just in 2004. And then obviously, about 7 years later, Colorado leaves the Big 12 in kind of a shocker. Nebraska joins the Big 10. Then shortly after that, Mizzou, Texas A&M joins the SEC. But the Big 12 then gets TCU and West Virginia, who's
I think that West Virginia one was the one that really, you talk about a team that really played out of its league.
Yes.
I mean, when West Virginia come to the Big 12, you're talking about the travel. And that's another thing there's a lot of outcry about is this isn't just hurting football, it's hurting basketball and all this,
Yeah.
the women's sports and the smaller programs that, when you're playing multiple games a week, you're having to travel out east and then go out west. I mean, so that was the one that really got me, like West Virginia in the Big 12. That was the head scratcher. Now it's happening every year where
Mm-hmm.
you look at UCLA, USC, and they're like, that's a Big 10 school or a Big 12 school.
Yeah.
It's crazy seeing them say SEC legend Vince Young. That's where it starts getting to be like, it gets weird, but you know what? They've had conference realignments for years. I mean, Arkansas was in the Southwest Conference. Now they're in the SEC.
Yep.
It's happened. South Carolina was in the ACC. Now they're in the SEC. So we're seeing things, but social media and everybody's talking 24/7 sports. There's more coverage. You're seeing it more now of you have something to complain about, and everybody's complaining about it, which again, I when this first come out, I compared it to like the land rush in Oklahoma. Like everybody's going to be running to get the most money. They're going to be the ones that say they're paying the most money. Now, once it settles down, you start having this, it's going to settle down. And when people are getting paid even, the top players getting the top pay, which that happens in NFL, you start going to see some of it settle down because it's hurting the players too. When they start money grabbing, your football is not a sport where, like basketball, where your skills, this is an NBA guy.
Yep.
There's a difference between being an 18-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, and you're going up against grown men in the league, or you're going up against a team that all of their team are all Americans. You could be great in college, but once you transition to that pro, it's a huge gap. So, it'll all fix itself out. But for the love of the game that I love, I like it because one, I think they deserve to get paid, but yes, there needs to be some kind of cap, some kind of control over it because it will get out of hand.
Yeah.
If it's not already.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think too, to your point, as much as people do kind of want to complain, we do like the big sexy matchups. Like we like being able to see, a powerhouse like Oregon for the last 20 years face someone like Ohio State, face someone like Penn State, face someone like Michigan. But to your point though, and it was something that I thought was really interesting, brought up by the commissioner of the AAC. I think it's Tom Pernetti, one of the two. He actually brought up, and I wanted your thoughts on it. He not only mentioned a salary cap, which again, treat it like the pros, keep everybody at a equal level playing field. And then, like you said, if it's someone like Arkansas, okay, now we have a massive budget. Now we can go kind of just like they do with NFL teams. We can go all out this year and just see what happens. And it kind of limits somebody like Texas A&M from being able to spend, a ton of money because they have a massive booster program. The other thing that I actually talked with another guy on, and I believe Tim, one of the two, mentioned it, is a potential collective bargaining agreement, just like the pros do. If the college players can unionize and get that. And I wanted your thoughts real quick, because this would be kind of my thought if I was a college football GM running a team, right? I'm going to sign this 5-star prospect out of whatever state. I'm going to sign you to a 4-year. I'm going to sign you to it'd be a 4-year contract. First 3 years are guaranteed with the option to pick up your 4th. And a lot of that, I would say, would be based on a few things. Obviously, one, your performance as far as how you're playing. Treat it just like the pros. If you don't show up to practice, if you're not working out, if you're not meeting the standards, that kind of deducts your overall pay of what you're going to get and whatnot. For me personally, for a lot of these guys, because much to your point, sometimes transferring over from college to the pros doesn't always work. For me, just to kind of add a safeguard for the athletes, not only would they be getting paid, I would throw in academically too. Like you have to maintain a certain level of a grade point average. Like every time you have an unexcused absence from class, you're getting docked, a certain amount of money for that, just like you would in the pros. And I know a lot of people kind of hated Deion Sanders because he treated them like that at Colorado. But realistically, he's setting them up for success in the future. But nonetheless, though, I would say sign them to at least a 3-year deal with the option for a 4th. That keeps them through their junior year. It could even make the discussion as far as, okay, hey, you're going to be our freshman prospect. You're not going to start because we already have another 5-star guy starting. But as long as you do everything you're supposed to do, you're all but guaranteed to start, the next season, whatever the case may be. And then after that, that gives the option of you can either A, you can go to the draft, you can B, stay, or if both parties kind of come to that point of, hey, I want to go somewhere else, I've done my obligation, let me leave, let that happen. And then the second part to that is, and again, the AAC commissioner brought this up, of there should be only one transfer portal opening. And
Yes,
he said,
absolutely, yeah.
and he said it should be at the end of the spring, at the end of the spring game, because then pretty much your depth chart and everything like that is set. You already know your guys who have already left, who's going to be kind of in what position and whatnot. And then, you can say, okay, this is where everybody's at. Now let me go out and see where I could potentially fit in and plug into. But, your thoughts on, as far as a collective bargaining agreement and the, transfer portal being a limited number of openings.
And I'm even okay with 2 year. My biggest thing is contract. Let's get contracts. Let's get things in place where these players, because it protects the players and it protects the universities, because now they are sharing money. They are throwing millions of dollars into this.
Right.
That way you can't have tampering. Other schools, and I brought this up with my co-host Adam Hall. You're talking about players wanting to get paid now. They're getting paid now. So where are you going to hit them? Okay, if you do miss, we're going to take it. We're not just going to kick you off the team, or we're going to set you out of court. We're going to take money away from you.
Yep.
You are now contractually agreed to said school. You're a part of that program. And another point, we're talking about, 16 team playoffs now. We're talking about super conferences. Well, guess what? You don't think the NCAA didn't have this already in place when all this money that could be going to their NCAA or the schools, now we're going to players. We got to recoup that money. So you want to get paid like the pros. We're going to make you play like the pros. We're going to make you play to where you could get a 16-team playoff and play longer into the year. You're going to play more games. You're going to play tougher games. Yeah. So it's one of those where be careful what you wish for, because now you're going to be like, man, this ain't a 12-game season. We're not going to have these 14 and 15-0 teams. You're going to have 17, 18-0 teams because you're playing more games. And that's the biggest thing of, they're going to get their money back. I mean, they're not dumb when it comes to making the money. And I always go back to when people wanted, they're up in arms about wanting the minimum wage raised, and they want minimum wage rates. Well, okay, it's places like Walmart and McDonald's and all these companies. Yes, we'll give you $20 an hour, but guess what? We're going to put kiosks in. People are going to scan in their own food. They're going to scan in their own groceries and make their own orders, and we're going to cut our workforce. So again, be careful what you wish for, but then again, it could be really good for these kids that they know when they get out of college, they're pretty much over with. They can make money, and there's more of that than there's people going to the NFL. So that's why I think it's a good thing that some of these guys can make a couple of million, go play for these colleges and be set, and then go work a normal job.
Yeah. Well, and that's why for me, if I was running it, that's why I would put that academic part in there, because, and again, I know a lot of people kind of hated Dion for that, because, he cut a lot of kids' scholarships, put them in the transfer portal, and I don't know everything behind the scenes, so I don't want to make any type of speculations or anything like that. But much to your point, he treated them like he got treated in the pros of, look, this is what we expect. And for the academic portion, much to your point, some of these guys, look at all the people that, typically go undrafted. Maybe they make the team, maybe they don't. You've got 32 professional teams, and you've only got 53 roster spots on all those teams. Now, yes, you have something like the UFL that I know they just restructured their payment agreement and whatnot a little bit ago. So not too far, but it's not the millions that you would potentially be making in the NFL. And I mean, heck, we've even seen college quarterbacks now. Look at Quinn Ewers. He went from, he was going to potentially make $8 million this season had he stayed, to now he's making a little over, I think 2 or 3 million now as a 7th rounder pick.
Yeah.
So, and probably one of the last quick questions, because I know you're limited on your time. Do you think now we'll see more guys staying in college?
Yes.
Because we did kind of see that. And I know, much to your point, college basketball is a little bit different, because I mean, heck, Cooper Flagg had, one outstanding year. He knows he's going to, go make a ton of money in the NBA as well. But at least for college football, most of the guys typically stay till about their junior season, and then they go on the NFL. Now, like I said, and maybe it's one of those that doesn't really change, because I know some of these guys are still going to bet on themselves of, hey, I know I'm still a top tier talent, so I think I'm going to be a first, second round pick and be able to make a ton of money. But, if you want a true safety net, let me stay in college, get an extra couple million in my bank account under my belt, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, do you think it changes the longevity of college football players now?
Yeah, I mean, you're already seeing five. I mean, COVID really. I mean,
Yeah.
in a sense, you're kind of already seeing it because of the COVID year. You're seeing the
Yeah.
fifth, the sixth, the seventh year. I think you won't see much of a change because of what we've seen during COVID.
Yeah.
But you're already seeing it in basketball. You're seeing it in baseball. Because think about we're talking about this college football thing being a minor league program. All right,
Mhm.
talk about the top guy other than Skeens. Okay, let's take Skeens out of the way because he just come. But you look at the guy that gets drafted in the first round. He
Mhm.
goes and rides on a bus for 2 years to try to get to AAA and the chance to get to the show. Okay,
Yeah.
you see that path. Then you go to
Mhm.
basketball. Outside of those we're talking about the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
Talk about those guys. I mean, you have the G League.
Mhm.
Well, how many guys of the G League have really made it to the NBA out of the G League? Or
Not
you
very
get a
many.
10-day contract. So you see the
Yeah.
grind of going to the G League, and there is no eyes on the G League. Nobody looks at that, watches it.
Nope.
You have a chance now where you can be in this special college football, amateurism's gone. So, you
Mhm.
can go to this minor league football system and make millions and then go make 400, 500,000 on a practice squad at the least.
Yeah.
You're not going and grinding it in the minor league baseball system. You're not going to the G League and hoping for that 10-day contract. But yes, I absolutely think that we'll see more of this. And you know what? More power to him because,
Mhm.
it's not like that guy that's staying for his 6 years just tearing it up and throwing for 6,000 yards, or he's running for 2,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. Nobody that's staying that long is just absolutely dominating it to where we're like, look, you need to be going to the NFL.
Right.
So we're not seeing these things. So that's where it doesn't bother me because the guy that stays 5 years, whatever, you're in your sixth school, cool.
Mhm.
You're not doing anything but one. And I think that's part of it is you keep switching schools. You're not
Mhm.
developing. You're
Yeah.
starting over. You
Yeah.
can't develop if you continuously starting over. It's like starting a new diet or a new workout plan. If you keep starting a new one, you're starting it from the beginning. So if these guys can go 2 years,
Mhm.
settle down, I think money, you just make these contracts. It's going to have more of a benefit on these kids because they're going to stick it out 2-3 years
Yeah.
and they're going to develop. Now, if they don't play out to where they go to the big leagues or the NFL, that's cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you look at yours. You've
Mhm.
done a bunch of bouncing around, and you've seen how fast his draft stock fell.
Yep.
And I think we will see more of that.
Mhm.
But if you hold them to their contract, hold them to their school,
Mhm.
in the end, you're going to have a better college product, and then you're going to have a better NFL product because these kids coming out of college have been developed, and they'll become better pros than what they would if they're bouncing around their fourth or fifth school.
Yeah. I do kind of wonder because it was just one thing that popped into my head was and I don't know how it would necessarily work because it's not like college has a draft or anything like that of do you think we'll ever see a trade in college football? Because I mean, it's similar to the pros. Maybe this kid decides to hold out because he feels that he's not getting paid enough. Now, much to your point, that's it's part of what those CBAs and those contracts are for and whatnot. But you can look at the NFL right now. Shamir Stewart coming out of Texas A&M.
Mhm.
He didn't like what the verbiage in that contract, and essentially, it's the Bengals not wanting to pay him a lot of that guaranteed money if there's injury or any type of issues. So, do you think we'd ever see something like that in college? And the weird part is, there's no draft picks to trade,
Yeah.
and it's one of those, why do I have to pay you more just to get you here, or do you want me to pay you more just to be able to get you play? So it'll be interesting if that ever happens and what compensation would potentially come about that too.
I think if we did be on down the road, I mean, we need to see how this all plays out before. But I mean, again, we could be having trades now, and it's like, well, this guy's hitting the portal and he's going here. Well, this
Mhm.
guy come out of that school. I mean, I don't know if necessarily trades, but I think we would see something of, hey, this guy is coming out of the portal. Let's get him, and we'll give you this guy. I just think there's a lot of things like you said. You don't have draft picks and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
we don't know. We've seen how fast this thing's changed in the last 3 years of going from a 14. I mean, you look BCS 10 years ago, 12 years ago to now, you're in a 14 playoff. Now you just quickly jump to a 16 team playoff. We don't know. And then also we don't know what happens if, the Big Ten ACC or SEC breaks off from the NCAA, form their own league, and then they might take what's here and then form like trade. We don't know.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting nonetheless. But Porter, I know you're short on time, so I appreciate you coming out. Let everybody know if they'd want to learn anything more about the Razorbacks, anything Arkansas related, where they could find you, good sir.
Just search anything, The Hawg Talk, the HAWGTALK. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. We're all over the place. We go live Sunday night, Thursday night, 6:05 p.m. We also have a sister show on our network, the Hawg HQ Live, that comes live. It's on 8:05, and we're part of the Believe Network, and also our radio station Buzz out of Little Rock. They play our shows weekly on Fridays on 106.7 Buzz 2. But yeah, anytime you want to chop it up this summer, there's going to be a lot to talk about leading up to this year. And then, of course, with Arkansas playing Notre Dame, 11 a.m. kick, that's been kind of a buzz around this. But, we just got into talking about that on our show. It's like you got to have a better product if you want the marquee game. So, when you're going up against Alabama, Georgia, I believe, and a few other games that weekend, you're going to get that 11 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah, and it was funny enough. That's actually what I watched a little bit today while I was at work. Was the SEC network broke down each of the team schedules and whatnot. And Arkansas, they actually were pretty favorable for Arkansas by a lot of the analysts comment. I was kind of watching it. I'm like, it's still a little rough for a little.
They're over unders 5.5, and I don't see them getting over 5 games. I just, with this schedule, with what they have coming back, it's brutal. You've got 2 games in Texas A&M and Missouri that you just can't seem to get over those. Then you're throwing in Texas A&M, Notre Dame in the mix. Plus, you have there's a lot to be said about this team. But you got a coach that you don't know if he's going to be here next year. We didn't know if he was going to be here coming into this season. So a lot of question marks around the Razorbacks this year.
For sure. But nonetheless, appreciate you joining on. If you liked everything that you saw here, please follow me at Inside the Hoosier Mind on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, aka Twitter is a little different. It's IN Hoosier Mind. And then please check out all the other great podcasters, great veterans here on Military Broadcast Radio and whatnot. If you want to learn more about that, there is a little QR code on the visual screen just underneath Porter. You can scan, learn a little bit more about the other shows we offer. And if you would ever like to potentially donate to help a veteran get podcast equipment, just help their voices be heard, just help them have them tell their stories and whatnot, it'd be greatly appreciated. But nonetheless,
before we hop off, man, my dad 34 years in the Army, so I really appreciate what you do. I was an Army brat. He did 5-year tours, so I really appreciate the military side of this things and what everybody does for y'all's network.
Yeah, I know we appreciate it. I know I appreciate it, and that's awesome. I'm technically an Army brat, even though he's in Vietnam, so I was still being carried around in his Starlight region, that we'll call it for a little bit. But I appreciate it, and yeah, we will be back.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.